The information provided on the Autoimmune Hour, including the websites understandingautoimmune.com plus social media, is for educational purposes only. What you read, hear, and see on the Autoimmune Hour and its websites and other media outlets is based on experience only. The information should never be used for any legal, diagnostic, or treatment purposes.
Welcome to the Autoimmune Hour. I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com and, of course, from UnderstandingAutoimmune.com. And I am so excited. We have a return guest, and I'm always thrilled when my dear, dear friend Sarah Peyton comes back to join us. And it's been a while since I've had a chance to catch up with her, so I'm really excited to talk to her about a few things that she's discovered and I've discovered. So it's just going to be a really fun back and forth here about what are some really cool things we're working on these days. And I hope you enjoyed as much as I know I'm going to enjoy it. So let me just give you a quick bio. Sorry if my face gets too big on the video, but I want to read it because she is amazing. I want to make sure I get it completely accurate. Because Sarah Peyton, she's a certified trainer in nonviolent communication and a neuroscience educator. She integrates brain science and the use of resonant language to awaken and sustain self-compassion, particularly in the face of such difficult issues such as self-condemnation, self-disgust, and self-sabotage. She teaches and lectures internationally and is the author of Your Resonant Self, and the co-author along with Roxy Manning, PhD, The Anti-Racist Heart, a Self-Compassion and Activism Handbook, and so many other things. And one of the things we're going to talk about today is writing because she's fantastic at that. We're going to dive right in. Hi, Sarah. Welcome.
Oh, Sharon, I'm so happy to be here with you.
Oh, I'm too happy. My brain's just going 100 miles an hour here because I'm just too excited to see you. So I got to slow myself down so the community can follow along. One of the things that we have talked about before, and I know you're diving deeper and deeper into the self-expression and how that self-expression is really healing. Your work, to me, centers around self-expression and understanding ourselves at a very deep level and self-compassion. Tell us why this is such a passion of yours.
What I love most about resonance and about learning about language and the brain is the learning that the brain is very, very happy when it gets to tell the truth. Now, telling the truth is tricky because people have a small window of welcome for our truth, or they get worried about us and they want to make us fix us instead of getting to listen to us. Sometimes it's hard to figure out where the heck can I tell my complex truth. But what I love about complex truths, where you talk about that you feel more than one way about something, is that your immune system blossoms and blooms with happiness when you get to talk about how complex your truth is. And so, how do we find places where we can be that expressive and be caught and have a sense that others are not overwhelmed or scared by our truth? And one of the places we can do that is when we kind of make an agreement with folks and have a resonance buddy or a sweet friendship where we get to go and be with somebody and tell the truth. Yes, my son is moving out. He's 26. It's amazing. I'm so happy that he's moving out. And at the same time, I'm a little bit terrified of the loneliness. There's something that's been really sweet about him and his partner staying under the same roof with us. So here's a complex truth where there's sweetness and sorrow and some fear. And these kinds of things, these truth tellings, change how quickly we heal. For example, if we have a cut or a scrape, we'll heal 3 days more quickly if we're telling our complex truth. If we have a cold or a virus, we'll get better 3 days more quickly if we're telling our complex truth.
Everyone, I love talking to Sarah because she always intrigues and inspires and accelerates my learning, I think is the word I want to use. But I love this idea of complex truth. We've known each other a long time. And you may have said it before and I wasn't ready for it. So I'm just putting that little asterisk out there. But this is the first time it really has hit home. Because I'm going through some complex truths myself right now. And I want to say a lot of my friends are too. But let's bring it back down to just like my own complex truths. When I heard that, just hearing the definition, I relaxed. I just
Oh,
went, oh, it's okay to feel more.
yeah.
Okay. It's okay that I'm like, yes, and
Right. Yes, the yes and. Yeah.
yeah. And it's really interesting. Years ago, a joint mentor of ours said to me one time, I always took it as a compliment. Sometimes things come out of people's mouths and you're not sure what, oh, okay, I think so. They said to me, one of the things I find so lovely and fascinating about you is your ability to hold more than one thought in your head at the same time and be okay. And I'm
Oh,
thinking like, okay, I think that's a compliment. But the
right.
older I've gotten and the more I've sat with that statement, I think it is a really big compliment because
It
I
is.
find that's something I really value, being able to be okay and hold more than
Yeah.
these conflicting ideas in my head at the same time.
Ah, that's a wonderful point. Yes. I think it's a compliment too.
Okay, well, it didn't sound like it years ago. When you're being mentored and coached and everything, sometimes you're not quite ready to hear the message.
Yes.
And that's one of the things I've learned as I'm continuing through life is the message may appear, but you may not be really ready to fully understand the depth of the message. You might take it as a compliment or not, or whatever it is. And at the surface, you're like, oh, that was nice. But over time, you begin to see how it really plays out. And not just that kind of compliment or comment, all sorts of comments in your life, whether it's been positive or not so positive.
Well, I kind of think about human brains. If human brains have any kind of sweet relational holding at all, they tend to become kind of like a fine wine. It just gets better and better as we age. There's more deepening, more complexity. When it's sort of like when you talk to, I mean, I love 20-year-olds and I love 26-year-olds. Like I said, I loved having my son here. But when you talk to somebody who's under the age of 50, then you talk to them and you can feel the words go like they go halfway through the person's brain. And if you're talking to somebody who's 80, then you talk to them and the stuff goes in and comes out and goes comes out. It's like this magical reverberation and expanded resonance that happens with older brains.
What I love about that, I'll bring it right down to a really concrete thing that happened to me the other day. I was talking to a teen, and they were lamenting things that they'd been reading, in the news and things like that. And I have enough history behind me that A, yes, I can be unhappy about it, but B, I was able to put it in some historical context. So they should be able to just breathe. Just breathe. This is figured out as we go, kind of thing. That was the interesting thing to me. As you said, it kind of goes in, but here I am where I'm able to really, okay, this is not exactly like that, but I can get some stability or some frame of reference from my past to go,
Yeah.
okay, here's another medical diagnosis or a medical hiccup. Okay, well, I've made it through X and Y and Z, and how do I apply those learnings to here? And
Yeah.
there's something really sweet and calming about that.
Yeah, sweet and calming and deeply relational and surprising. Yeah, I like it. I like so there's so much of a an idea that we lose capacity or lose our oomph as we age. So it's fun to have something to enjoy.
Well, I think you and I are going to be one of those that, like, what is that quote about, not settling down and skidding out sideways? I think I kind of like to think of myself as that. Many times, I love that there's history to it. As you know, I'm a big fan of journaling, and even just being able to journal and write down some of the history to give myself context so I can continue to expand the things I'm learning. Like, okay, this is how much I already know, or I think I know, or have experience. And that's one of the things that I find really powerful. I know you've got a writing workshop coming up, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you because I just find it so powerful. I wanted to share it with my audience. Talk to us a little bit about how writing has helped you.
I just also want to say that each person has their own wisdom, such beautiful, specific wisdom from their own lives. So each voice is so important and valuable. So for me, in terms of writing now, one of the things that I think as I write is I think, what does my body want to make sure that people know? What do the cells of my body want to make sure that my reader gets from whatever I'm writing? What kind of Sarah's specific wisdom wants to get out through these cells and be on paper? And that's such an interesting question. It's really changed my relationship with a sense of having a writing block, because I just keep dropping back into, what does my stomach want the world to know? What does my heart want readers to know? And what kind of stories can we tell that help this information flow? So that's one of the important things. And so we're doing a writing workshop, and it's a possibility to write and be received with resonance, so that each time that we meet, there's a lottery for somebody to come out and read to the whole group if they want to. And to be received with, like, how did that hit my body? What happened in my body when I heard what you wrote? What was meaningful to me? How did what you wrote give me a gift? And then everybody puts in the chat, it's on the Zoom class, and everybody puts in the chat, what helped them? What moved them? What touched them? What are they taking away? What will they remember from what the person has read aloud? There's also a time during the class when people get to go into breakout rooms to be able to read to each other and be received in the same way. What gifts came from listening to your specific voice expressing? Those are completely optional. If people are listening and going, well, I would love to write, but I don't want to read to anybody, then you do not have to. Those are completely optional experiences, and you can work up to them slowly or never. Or you can go, oh, that sounds great. An audience who actually responds, because that's one of the things with writing that can be irritating.
Yes, definitely, especially like when you post a blog post, unless somebody comments, it just floats out there.
Yeah, I think we long for dialogue.
You just took me back to a few thoughts I had a couple of weeks ago when I was walking on the beach. And I don't know, I'm just at that age, I guess. I was thinking about someone who had a profound effect on me throughout my whole childhood and teen years into my early 20s, when then unfortunately she passed away. But I don't know how to say this community without it sounding strange. But after me, unless I write this down, all her memories, I think maybe I'm being dramatic here, but to me, all of that love she gave me, teaching she gave me, she created most of who I am, I think, in lots of ways, or helped craft it or loved it along.
Oh.
I was thinking about this on my beach walk. I was like, I really want to start writing about my relationship with her, what I learned from her, because after me, she won't even be a memory anymore. So I know that sounds kind of morose, but that's the kind of writing and exploration my heart's really seeming to do right now, is some of those people that really touched me that are no longer with us, somehow being able to write that to keep some of that really wonderful things that other people brought into my life.
Oh, the wisdom, the beauty, the contribution,
Yeah.
the nourishment. Oh, wow.
I hope it didn't sound too dark, guys, but I was just thinking about that. I was like, okay, I'm getting up to that age where I would really love people to know that amazing people guided me, mentored me, helped me along the pathway, and what they contributed to the world beyond just me. I can talk about the things I saw in their lives that they did beyond helping me.
Of course.
That's where my writing is being called somewhat right now.
Your body is saying, I want this to go out into the world.
Right, like you were talking about the stomach. What is the stomach? What is the heart singing to do? And I'm like, actually, it's my memories are singing too. I'm trying to say it not in the negative, but it's going to come out in the negative. Don't let them be lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm getting a little emotional, everybody, because those people did have a huge impact on my life. And the older you get, the more you want to find ways to honor those people who you feel like really held your handle on the path.
Yes. So interesting. My mind blossoms into the people that I've loved that have been extraordinary, who are no longer on the earth.
And that's what I love about having chats with Sarah.
Mm.
Because we end up in the most unusual, marvelous places, like going down the path, and all of a sudden, ooh, what's over there? Look at this, a meadow of wildflowers. Now, some people might say, okay, Sharon, that sounds really good. And they'll come up with all sorts of reasons like, oh, I don't have the time, I'm not a writer. But I really want to encourage people. Writing has been so transformational in my life that I want to encourage people to, at the minimum, I like to write with pen and paper, by the way, or pencil and paper, whatever. Sometimes I find the muscle movement of that can get the old brain cells flowing better than sitting there staring at a document, a white screen.
I was just looking at, so one of the things that I do with a writing class, and what I'll do with this writing class that starts next week, is to take a subject and look at the neuroscience of the subject. So you write for a little bit, then you look at some neuroscience, then you think about that neuroscience, then you write again. So there's this kind of wonderful deepening into the subject matter. And what we're going to be thinking about starting on July 8 is we're going to be thinking about chronic illness and fatigue and regular illness and how that impacts the brain and what we can do in terms of warmth and resonance and contract work to be as wonderfully gentle and kind with our bodies just as they are, just at the level of expression that they're reaching for, just to be able to begin to tell the complex truth of the story of our body's experience living on this planet with whatever impacts and difficulties and beauties we have lived through with these bodies. We'll be playing with, learning about the neuroscience of the brain and how it figures out to manage with stuff that goes slightly awry in human bodies. What does the brain do with fatigue? What does the brain do with long COVID? What does the brain do with chronic illness of various kinds? What does the brain do with cancer? How do brains protect us from the experiences we're having? How do brains expand into the experiences we're having? How do brains transcend the experiences we're having? So this is one of the things that I really enjoy about being a writer and inviting other people to write, just as you're saying, Sharon.
Yes. And give us a couple of examples because some people might not have. I'm encouraging, if you haven't seen Sarah's shows, go back to the archives and search them out. They're fantastic. But give us just a couple of examples of when you say neuroscience of the brain or asking our brain to go there with warmth. I'm wondering if some people just might need a little primer on what that would really look like or mean. Can you give us a couple examples?
Sure. So one of the ways that I respond when I get sick or get overtired and can't do what I wish I could do is that I start to beat myself up. And so then I'm in this like trying to get myself going by beating myself up mode, which, brings energy to the brain because when you beat yourself up, you cause both dopamine and cortisol to flow, but which kind of overdraw your checking account even more. Or you can go into a different space where you practice instead of being cruel to yourself, you're kind. You're like, oh, Sarah, my sweetheart, of course you're tired. Would you like some acknowledgement of like how much your digestion has been totally upset in the last week? Do you need to have somebody, your own self, possibly, sit as a witness to the difficulties and the hardships that your body's been working through? would it be interesting to have compassion and warmth and to say, well, given that you feel not very good, still, what is it that you'd like to be able to express? What would you like to, what truth wants to be said, and what truth wants to find its way out past the fatigue? Like, it's such a different question. What what wants to come through, and how can I support it to come through gently instead of taking out the whip of self-criticism and hitting myself with it, which doesn't do good things for my immune system. And the other approach really does do good things for my immune system.
That's wonderful. I love how you define that for us because it really gives us some structure to understand what resonant language is when we're talking to ourselves as well, and understanding how coming from that place of compassion that we often give to others and not ourselves is, is critically important. And as you were talking about beating yourself up on occasion, I know my hand went up internally. It was like, okay, yep, been there and done that on occasion, to ruminate about things.
It takes a certain amount of self-trust, doesn't it, to move out of the self-flagellation into self-warmth? Because I think the first thing that happens when people think about self-warmth is they think, oh, I'll just collapse into a little puddle and I'll never move again. That won't work. But
Without stress, I would have nothing at all. Is that kind of the thought? I mean, okay. Yeah, I could see where one is a much more productive thought than the other.
it's interesting to begin to experiment with it, to say, sort of again, coming back to our yes and. Yes, of course you're feeling awful. And is there anything that you would like to have come through anyway? Is such a different question. And one of the things that I try to do, because I tend to get like, my heart tends to go into overdrive if I drive myself too hard. I really have to learn to like throttle back, you know. So one of the things that I try to do is I look at my to-do list and I'm like, okay, doing that thing, that feels like that would really take a lot of driving to get there. What is it on my to-do list that needs to be done that's actually calling me, that gives me a little lift to be able to do? And that's a perfectly good thing for writing as well. Oh, I know what I want to tell you. There's a piece of research that came out last week from MIT about AI. Because, I mean, AI is helping lots of people do lots of cool things. And to be able to help to compensate for the ways that we get like so tired. But people are in a dialogue right now about what does AI do with the brain? How does the brain respond to AI? And MIT just came out with a new study that showed that if people wrote their essays all by themselves without AI, then they had increased neural connections. And if they if they used AI to write their essays, then they ended up with fewer neural connections than they had to start with. So
Oh, dear. Oh, that's similar to research I've been reading too, which I have to put my hand up. I've tinkered with it. I'm no expert in AI, but I've tinkered with it. And I was reading similar research about our young people versus someone like myself who was an adult by the time even email came into to effect, right? So a lot of those skills about writing and things were handwritten and brain thought.
yeah.
I've been reading this research too about our young people, and being able to have pattern recognition is disappearing. I think we could go into this whole talk about the pros and cons of AI. That was to me, because of my body language and communication work, one of the things that I think I use a lot is pattern recognition. And when can I see similarities and patterns and things that are dissimilar, and that doesn't belong with that, but that kind of thing. And apparently that's disappearing too. I have to put my hand up because they were talking about how people are using it to even quell their emotions. Like, how do I write a sympathy note to a friend, but not such a close friend? And then it would give two or three versions. And I have to put my hand up because I've done that. And I was thinking, you're right. I just bypassed as I was reading the research, I was like, wow, I put my hand up that I did it, but I just bypassed a lot of my processing and emotions from my friends, family member passing by allowing AI to write me a perfectly sufficient sympathy note.
Yeah. And it can be such a huge stress reduction. And sometimes we don't need those extra neural connections.
This is such a where did we start? Like holding one idea in our head, holding more than one idea in our head at the same time, being okay? Because this is really,
Right, right.
we took a rabbit hole I didn't expect.
Yeah,
But it is so true.
yeah.
I did take a AI, just like introduction to AI class, and kind of like this is how you turn it on kind of class.
Oh,
And it was great. But one of the people commented on there. She said towards the end of the class, we were talking about what did we like and everything. She said, I liked it because it took away my fear of the blank page.
oh, that's so good.
And I thought, okay, well, I get that because she was someone who would really embellish up from her own, take it and run with it.
With it, yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I was like, okay, I can appreciate that. I can really appreciate that versus when I wholesaled out my sympathy card.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's something that I love to encourage in writing classes is the return to the body and the body's truth. Now, AI doesn't have a body, so so it doesn't have to worry about its own nervous system and keeping itself regulated, which gives it like lots of capacity to extremely quickly respond about emotional stuff. But there's something here about sinking in and finding what's true for us that becomes even more important in today's world. And so I just really so enjoy each individual person's voice. I have three people working on my help desk, and I was having a conversation with my help desk person this morning, one of my help desk people. She said, in these economic times, things are tight. Do you want us to really throttle back and become really terse in our responses? And I said, no, each of you has such a distinct voice. And many mornings I wake up and read what the help desk has been writing to people, and it actually brings tears to my eyes because there's so much warmth and care and individuality in the expressions that people have. And knowing that there are real people on the other end of these kind of lifelines of email or text or so on, there's something there in a world where loneliness is fast becoming our hugest health issue. It's really something to be thoughtfully received by another human.
Absolutely. And here I am taking the yes and
Oh,
position again.
I love yes,
The
and
other day, I wrote to inquire about a refund to a company. They're not a large company, not tiny, but a company. And I wrote to inquire about the refund. And in under a minute, I got a reply that I think was fairly well written, but honestly, because it came back in under a minute, I knew it was AI. So, I mean, it's like nobody sat there in a help desk and under a minute types out 3 paragraphs, right? That are relevant to my question. And that had me, it wasn't the best answer, but it was perfectly acceptable. There was nothing here nor there about it. It didn't really spark anything other than answer my question. But that got me to thinking about not wanting to lose that humanity of ours. Because I know that help desk was not a human being answering my question. And there was something about it where I went like, huh, I kind of have liked supporting your company because you have a lot of nonprofits that you support. And so I like supporting those, kind of thing. And I'm like, I feel kind of like, yes, thank you for answering my question. But it left me with,
yeah, yeah. You were glad to get the response. I was glad to have it be efficient, but something
but
about
I knew there wasn't a real being behind it. And I don't know, there was part of something about it, thinking about how important these connections are and to make sure that we don't lose the ability to connect. That's my concern.
oh, so interesting. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because I know during the pandemic, I reached out to a lot of people, just like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a long time. People I would either meet on the street or at networking events or business meetings, those all disappeared.
Right.
And throughout the pandemic, I made it pretty much a concerted effort to reach out and say, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. How you doing? Jump
Mm.
on a Zoom call or something with them. And I fear that that's almost still going on, even though we could get together and have tea at any time with my friends. It's like, okay, I sometimes fear that that's still going on, that,
So the pandemic, I think, are very real.
yeah.
So just to include the after effects of the pandemic, both for folks who are just sort of impacted with the trauma of loneliness, which has its own impact on the body, but also to acknowledge and bow to folks with long COVID, just to say, of course, you're not able to do what you used to be able to do in terms of connecting and yeah.
But when I got your email about the workshop, I was like, oh, this would be so much fun to have that connection of somebody interested in what you had to say and the ability to express myself. That's why I called you up, because I was really intrigued with what all does that do to all of our calming our nervous system, that the connections that I felt were lost during the pandemic could begin to be reconnected in our nervous system.
Yeah, that's such a great wondering. And one of the things that you and I have talked about in the past, whenever we've talked about trauma, is we've talked about our capacity as humans to try to protect ourselves from trauma ever happening again, often in the form of making agreements with ourselves that we don't even know that we're making, like unconscious contracts that are a part of our experience and our response to trauma. So if we're thinking about the after effects of loneliness and how we might still be functioning under that kind of expectation of unalleviated aloneness, we could think about our unconscious contracts. So, what kinds of contracts have we made that make us stop reaching out? Like, I will expect to be alone. And then whenever we figure out, oh, I do have an expectation that I'll be alone, I will expect that I'll be alone in order to, then usually it'll be to save ourselves from something. I will expect to be alone in order to save myself from the crashes of disappointment and loneliness that come when I hope for connection that doesn't happen. And that can be something that we unconsciously made, an agreement we unconsciously made with ourselves during the pandemic. That because the last part of the contract, as you and I have talked about in the past, is no matter the cost to myself. And I do realize as I'm talking with you right now and thinking about myself after the pandemic, that there is a way that's an agreement I made with myself to help me survive those days and days and days of there being nobody there.
One of the agreements that I've noticed as I've been working through this thought in myself was it was more stoic. Knowing that all of a sudden there was going to be, I know it's funny because my brain thought complete lack of contact. Of course, there's phones, of course, there's Zoom,
Yeah.
but my brain just went, oh my goodness, I can't touch people, I can't hug people, I can't. And so it was this complete, my first responses were like, oh no, utter disaster. And then it was almost as if I got stoic. Oh, I can pull myself up. I'll be okay by myself. And I almost got in that rut. Well, I did get in the rut and then I had to find my way out. But it was like, I'm fine by myself.
Yes, I will believe, I will know that I'm fine by myself in order to, is it just like in order to make it through all the empty days?
Yeah, it was in order to make it through the lack of contact, or sort of, I don't need the hugs and I don't need the contact. And
Yeah.
it was in hindsight, I can see it was a self-protection type of contract. Okay. Even in the early days, we were even keeping, if family members didn't live with us, they were at arm's length or whatever. You had your little bubbles, and sometimes family members that you cared about weren't in your bubble.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was really hard, and you had to be kind of stoic, like, oh, okay, I just can't pop over to my friend's house and have tea whenever I want to.
yeah, yeah. And I've thought about this in the context of the 1918 flu, the Spanish flu, and the way in which we came out of the Spanish flu compared to the way that we came out of COVID. Because coming out of COVID, there's no clear moment where COVID was over. There was no declaration, there was no dancing in the streets, there was no, it's just been like, okay, and now when's the next spike? So it's got this different kind of dampening impact. And when I think about the roaring 20s, that kind of rush back into communality and parties and dancing and being together and live music and the flappers and the Charleston.
We should have a flapper party.
Yeah, that whole explosion of sociality was after the Spanish flu was over and people were safe again. I think about how do I get myself into the roaring 20s a little bit, you know? How do I come out of the fear and the worry? And certainly I had very long COVID, and not as long as some.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of after effects of having had COVID. And so I got really good reasons to be quite, does the thing I'm going out to do, is it worth risk now? And there's a lot of room for self-compassion and self-encouragement and self-warmth and coaxing and gently encouraging myself to be brave again in some ways.
Oh, absolutely. For me, I had long COVID as well, and there was so many thoughts that went through my head, and a lot of them were not positive. It's like, I don't want to go back there. It was not a forward-thinking thought. It was an away from thought. A lot of self-coaxing and a self-love and self-comfort to say, you know, in my mind, sort of like, and what led you to believe that it would, Or I sometimes ask myself that question when I'm like, well, yeah, it is a possibility, but so are, a thousand other things. Why am I stuck on this one thing of like, oh, I don't want to go back there and away from instead of a forward, a to, a goal, a love, a compassion, whatever it is, something forward.
Yeah. Yeah. How do we acknowledge the impact that trauma and aloneness and long illness has had on us? And how do we find our best way to live
Mm.
the way that feels good to us?
Oh, absolutely. And we're down to just the last 5 minutes, Sarah. When I get with Sarah, I just love it. Uh, so I want you to share. I know I've run you down a lot of rabbit holes, which I always love because you always come hand in hand with me down any old rabbit hole.
Wow.
But I do want everyone to know about this workshop that's coming up. I know it's short notice, but I just thought it's going to be so worth it. That what would you like to share with everyone, A, about maybe wrapping up our conversation today and or the workshop that's coming up?
Thank you so much. It's a 6-week weekly course, an hour and a half, 8 to 9:25 on mornings, on Tuesday mornings, starting on July 8th. And we've been talking about a lot of the things that we'll cover in the class and go into in more detail with the research that helps us to understand ourselves with more compassion when we're experiencing illness and fatigue. One of the things that I did not yet mention that I think is really important for everybody is that our digestive system is formed through our relationship with our mothers, and our immune system is immensely responsive to our relationship with our internalized mothers. So the more that we have warmth and compassion and complex truth-telling, the more we're supporting our immune system to be able to function no matter what load it's functioning under, to be able to function just a little better. And so part of what we'll be looking at is mom's lifelong impact on illness and pain, and how our ability to find, in a way, the truest, most essential soul of our mother and allow her to love us. So we've all got human mothers. They all lived through a heck of a lot of trauma, and they all loved as best they could. And what they would have done if they'd been completely supported emotionally themselves might have been a little bit more than what they were able to do. And if we're in relationship with that sense of our mom's essential nature as the internalized mother, it gives us calm, sweetness, nourishment, and massive support for the kind of self-compassion that can walk hand in hand with us, whatever condition we're in relationship with. And then finally, that we'll also be celebrating our relationship with the body. After we get to acknowledge all those complex truths, we'll get to celebrate our relationship with the body. So that's what I'd want to say. And other than that, we really gave a great description of the way the class goes and how much we get to do some free writing during the class, a couple different periods, and a little bit of learning and a little bit of conversation, perhaps, if we want to, with a partner in a breakout room. It's a lively and encouraging atmosphere for creativity and for the invitation of self-warmth into our experience of chronic illness and pain.
I love that. And can I add self-discovery?
Oh, yeah. Self-discovery is so fun and so much hand in hand with this material.
I love those moments when all of a sudden something finally dawns on me. Very much. I know it's growing and energizing inside, but all of a sudden there's those light bulb moments where you're like, oh, it makes perfect sense now. Or maybe not perfect sense, but oh, I can see the connection now. I love those moments when they really become conscious and you're like, oh, I get it. Okay, I get it. And that's helped my own healing from my autoimmune condition. As you know, with any chronic conditions and things, you've got your ups and your downs, and it's not a straight line normally, usually. Bravo to you if yours has been a straight line, community, but mine has not been. And it just understanding and taking the learnings from the past. I'll just quickly say, which I see within this workshop, when I had had a setback and I was talking to my naturopath about it. She said, Sharon, when I met you, you were in this valley here, and together we've walked up to up this mountain. She says, you've only slipped back a step
That's
in the
sweet.
valley anymore. And I
Mm,
could see how, whether we're starting in the valley or we're halfway up the mountain, how the self-discovery within community that understands resonant language and the brain, how the brain works, how our nervous system works, would be such a wonderful way to climb the mountain together, get further up to towards wherever you're going on that mountain. So
mhm.
thank you so much for sharing it with us, Sarah. I'll have more information and the link to the actual class in the description, everyone, on YouTube. And also, if you're listening on this in the audio formats, we'll have it there in the description as well. And Sarah, I love you so much. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and just who you are. I know the audience is thrilled that you're back with this, and you're bringing something new for us to really learn about ourselves and explore.
Oh, thank you so much, Sharon, and thanks for the work you do in the world and creating this beautiful community.
Thank you, my dear. Everyone, have a great week, whatever your adventures. Be sure and sign up at the link below to Sarah's class. I know it's just right around the corner, but we'll just scurry on over there and I'll get on to it. And, and so join me next week for another brand new episode. And if you are part of Sarah's class, I look forward to hearing about all your learnings. Enjoy.